Would you like a motion to?
Yeah, why don't we just, I mean, I was gonna call Kia, but she's
I
using a
move
regular,
that we approve Ken's latest minutes.
right?
Second.
Both sets of minutes, the April 28th and April 25th. Why don't we do them individually?
Sure, why not?
Okay, so motion for the April 28th minutes. Do I
Move
hear?
to approve April 28th minutes.
Second.
Second,
Oh, yeah, Mark is in charge of seconding.
Okay,
Everybody needs a job.
Yeah,
the multi-committee
Absolutely.
approach here. Okay, all those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And then secondly, the May 25th minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Move that we approve the May 25th, 2022 minutes, master
And
plan.
Second.
Thank you.
see, they're good at this.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
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 And any opposed or abstentions? Apparently not. Okay, Kia, welcome. Yeah. Okay, well, hopefully she can hear us. Okay, to the main event. Basically, we want to discuss tonight the transition, and I wouldn't say to, but in collaboration with a new consultant. So Valerie, you want to bring us up to date on process, procedure, and expectations for the near term?
Sure, yes. So I think first off, we were looking for any feedback or responses or edits or questions that you might have about the proposal that we received from BSC Group. If there's any question that you might have, it would be helpful, I think, just to be able to have a vote to kind of formalize an approval of the proposal, which we've received from the Proposal Evaluation Committee as well as the Planning Board just last night. So if there's any further comment or question from this group, it'd be great to hear that now.
I'd just like to clarify one thing, Valerie.
Mhm.
On your RFQ, before you got your proposal back, you stated that with Bolton had a grade school, a middle school, and a high school. In Bolton, we do not have that. We have a K-8 system, very different from a grade school and a middle school. It's very different from Stowe and Lancaster. Just
Okay.
so that your consultant knows that,
Yeah, that's
because
good
it's a
point.
very different concept.
Okay, yeah, that's a great point to make.
Okay,
And we host a
just to
high school,
clarify.
but don't own it.
Right.
Anybody else? So I would entertain a motion to vote approval and recommendation to the planning board, which has already approved it, for the proposal by BSC as a consultant to the master plan steering committee. Do I hear a proposal, a motion? Excuse me.
Mouthful.
Yes. Chair, I don't believe I can do that.
I
Move
move we accept BSC as the consultant to the master planning committee for the development of the master plan.
And a second.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Any
I
opposed?
just, Brian told me that this was the only proposal we got, right? Correct?
That's correct.
Right.
And Valerie, you can talk very briefly, as you did last night, about some of the background on that.
Yes, yeah. So that's excellent. Great. So we were able to secure the $100,000 from ARPA funds and through town meeting. So that helped us kind of generate the one consultant that we were able to get. So basically, it definitely turned out that it was difficult, to kind of attract other consulting firms to Bolton when we didn't have secured funds. So I think, some of that plus consultants being quite busy at the moment, dealing with the MBTA community zoning that's affecting 175 communities throughout Massachusetts. People are pretty tied up, but we're very happy to have BSC Group. They've been working with the town of Bolton for a couple of years now on conservation matters, helping with the municipal vulnerability preparedness action grants. So they know Bolton quite well through a conservation and climate resilience lens, which is perfect for our master plan effort. So very excited to get them on board. So what I'll do now is I'll send them out an email and have them start drafting up a contract. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll start kind of sharing information and preparing for our first few tasks here, which should happen in July. So one of their first tasks that they'll be doing, which I'm very excited about, is putting together a build out analysis of the town, just looking at, what if no zoning policies or bylaws changed, what would the town look like in 20 years? So that's going to be able to give us a good baseline in order to kind of judge all of the recommendations that will come out of this process against, so that we can really see, see what impact we might have. And they'll
Can
be
you say
joining.
why you decided on that as your first task for them?
Yeah, so it's part of a couple other kind of kickoff items. I think it's a great way to just make sure that all of our systems are working, first of all, just to make sure that our GIS layers are shared, that that they've done a review of the zoning bylaw, that they understand that. So it's kind of a bit of a check that they've received all the correct information and that they're able to work with it, and they don't have any outstanding questions about our zoning bylaw and other policies in town. So it's a really good way to kind of make sure that they do all their background research and can come to the table with that kind of product. I think also it serves as a really good tool for you all to be able to understand what the impact of a master plan could be specifically for Bolton. So really looking at what the next 20 years could look like if we didn't do anything. So it's a great way to kind of judge that against what our vision is for the town. Does it represent what we are comfortable with? Are there ideas in our goals and visioning that might run counter to what we would produce otherwise? So it's kind of a good jumping off point as well, just to get some other conversations started.
Yeah, it'll provide a little future shock as well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It'll be
Yeah.
very interesting also, at least from my perspective, to see how what they come up with differs from what was developed in 2020 by the state. UMass put together their program, and it was pretty comprehensive. I think, Ken, you were able to dig that up.
Nope, muted.
Yes, it was circa 2000, no, not 2020.
I'm sorry, I meant 2000.
That's okay. So it was like 20 years ago, but yes, I found all of that and put it in the Dropbox. So if anybody wants to see it, they can go to the land use task group site on Dropbox, and there's a series of, I think it's 4 maps that were put together that dealt with various aspects of the stuff, and then some accompanying photographs and things of that sort that went with it. I had thought there was something else, though, that I will say I didn't study that in detail today, but I had thought there was something out there that had an actual population projection based on build out of something like 72 or 7,300, because my recollection is that was actually used in the library expansion planning that was done in mid-decade or a decade ago or whatever. So, but I don't know. But anyway, whatever the state did that I had now is available to everybody.
Well, I'll tell you the truth, that's how I spent my summer. That summer, I think of 2000, after being a selectman, I pretty much lived at town hall And we had gotten that MAPC build-out study, and we had many trips to Neshoba Blue to create big acetate maps. And working with the MAPC data, I filled in all the areas that were basically possibly slated for, some future development. And the number 9,000 comes to mind for me in terms of what the maximum projection was. And I don't know what happened to those maps, unfortunately. They led to town hall.
Take a look at what I put on,
Thank you.
put on the Dropbox and see whether they're the same ones
Okay,
that you worked with.
all right.
It'd be interesting to get back to the primary source and see if we can get somebody, and I'm sure our consultant has access to this and would be much more aware of who to talk to in the Executive Office of Energy and Environment, which was in its former life responsible for this and was the one that put it together. So I'd be very interested in what that original data looked like. Ed, if you can look into that.
See if I have some files.
But I do remember that it was a huge number.
It
In fact,
was.
Ed, they're not that big. I'll send them to you. I'll send you the folder later.
Okay,
I'll just email it to you when we're done here.
all right.
Okay, so the game plan then is to have them look, first of all, at the build-out study, but in parallel with that, kick off, and that's probably plural meetings, with, first of all, the steering committee, and then as is appropriate in their series of activities that they have proposed, meeting with other task groups, but understanding the fairly big picture of where we stand, what we have done, what we have available, so that they're able to pick particularly information out that may not be generally available online. So we did put together a summary document that had, in sort of bullet format, a relatively high level where we are on the basis of individual task groups, and to some degree where we're going. Some task groups filled in more than others in that respect. And now we need to go down to the next level. First of all, to expand where we are, and do that pretty much in bullet form as we have done before. Don't worry about where we're going. We'll jointly agree on that with a consultant. But more importantly, identify all of the useful information, quite specifically, that has been developed by each task group. And I would suggest that we do it very much the way, and I discussed this earlier with Valerie, the water and sewer task group has done. So if you can let me share my screen, see if I can, first of all, make sure I have this. Okay. Okay, this is what we had talked about in terms of a bulletized form. This is still fairly simple. I would suggest that in most cases, it would have to be substantially more than this, of course, depending on how much effort and how much information has been developed by each of the task groups. Let me drop that down. And in the case of water and sewer, let me put that up. We developed, and I think it's important that we do this consistently, basically two documents, one of which provided all of the information that we gain online. And again, it goes back to the philosophy of going back to the primary source so that we don't have stuff in our Dropbox that may have been picked up online but has since been changed. Obviously, in terms of a legitimate investigatory approach, you go back to primary sources. So what Water and Sewer has done is identify the title of the information, identify to the best, at least projection of how it would be used in the master plan, and then identify the link to where it's found online. And inevitably, well, in some cases, those links won't work. I check most of them and they do. And in some cases, the information is more recent than what we had originally used. And that's an important element of going back to primary sources. So I will send this around. I would appreciate it if each of the task groups would look at it. There was a lot of research done, thanks to Mark and Brett and Barry, for water and sewer. And I expect that this is more than is typical, with the exception perhaps of climate change and land use, which also has a great deal. And then the second part is that information which is not available online. And that's this sort of information. And this information, I would hope, is available within Dropbox. And so the approach is to use Dropbox and then identify in a similar fashion what the information is, a description of it, and where you can reasonably assume where it might be used in a master plan, where the source came from. Some of this was generated by the task group based on a number of things. We put together some presentations. We put together actually a very detailed, much more detailed than I think ultimately will be used in the master plan, outline of the overall section for water and sewer. And that was a team effort. Barry kicked it off, and all the rest of us spent time on that. And then in this particular case, and I think it's a good idea to break it down into genre of information, it was relatively straightforward to separate water-related information from sewage information. And this was information that, as I said, is not available online. We collected from a number of sources. Some of it, I would characterize as antique documents. Let's see, I think one good one. Yeah, item 7 here, the MRPC Water Quality Study of 1977. One of my first introductions to this operation, which was a bound volume that we scanned and put in Dropbox, which contains still some very useful information because it addressed the issue of our zoning in Bolton, our land use in Bolton, and how that impacted both water and sewer. Bolton got a clean bill of health in this case, and I'm not sure anything's changed, but it's really useful information about water and sewer. So that, I think, is what we're looking for, and it will be an enormous advantage into providing the consultant with the information that they need and give us a common basis for conversation about where to go next and what we've already done. So, a combination of a narrative in bullet form of where we are, what we've done, as well as pretty definitive list, again, with either links or access. And in the case of Dropbox, I've just done it in a, using the taxonomy of this particular task group, but there's no reason that you can't use links and share it in the Dropbox location instead of doing it this way. That's probably a better way to do it, actually. So I will send these 2 examples around. I'd appreciate it if each of the task groups, and we can get into the details of who's going to take care of leading this activity with each of the task groups. Now, questions, comments? It's it's a fairly big deal. I've done it over the last couple of days, and it took a fair amount of time, more than I expected, even though water and sewer had spent a fair amount of time putting stuff in Dropbox, and Barry did an outstanding job of identifying all the links that we had picked up and consolidating those. But I think if you're familiar with the task group and the research that's been done, it's a great way to get it all together, and it's useful to the task group, certainly, as well as consultants. So, questions, comments?
Get to work, right? Sounds
Other than
good.
they have the water and sewer group has their own misnomer, they're called the water and sewer rats. And they
You're right.
started out back in the first master plan and now have moved to the second master plan.
Boy,
When do you need this?
Well, I looked to Valerie.
So yes, so
Yeah,
that's a
not
great
obviously
idea.
not yesterday. I mean, this is a semi-crisis, not a full crisis by any means. It's, it's better to do it well than, do it quickly and have to go back and revisit it and have a lot of conversations and oh gee, I forgot. And here's a great piece of information discussion. But Valerie, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, right. So as Bob's saying, like the purpose of this really is to be able to kind of to loop in the consultant on what you've all been able to accomplish, so that we can just give them one simple document that says, here are the bullet points, and then here's the links to the work products themselves. So if possible, you can let me know if this is too soon, but why don't we say 2 weeks from today? Why don't we say July 7th?
I see Mary
I'm saying,
shaking her
yeah.
head.
So yeah, it might be too soon. I know some people have vacations coming up. That's definitely my preference. I think this is one of the first things that we need to be giving to the consultant. So I'm gonna let that date kind of sink in for a little bit. Maybe we can.
A suggestion is the people who can get it done by the 7th to get it to Valerie. And those who can't, get it to her as soon as possible after the 7th. So at least she has something to hand the consultant.
Okay.
That they can start working on.
The other side of that, Valerie, I think might be worthwhile talking to Heather and understanding what her sequence of events are with respect to particular topical areas, and see if we can't identify that on a priority basis.
Yeah, definitely. I would also say, I think the other component of this is a little bit of Dropbox cleanup. So if at the same time that, for me, I'm imagining I would do this for the land use task group. So one thing I'll do is go into the Dropbox task group folder for land use, and I'm going to make sure that everything that's in there is clear. Who is the author of it? What's the date of it? Where did it come from? Is it something that we are, interested in thinking about for the plan, or is it something that we actually created and is already institutionalized in Bolton, right? So there's our Dropboxes, the task group folders are quite full of a lot of ideas, and it does need to be, I think, a little bit more clear what is a good, what are our hopes and examples that we're taking from other towns, and then also what might have already been authored by us in there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think if there is something that doesn't fall into serious information, either which we've generated or is available online, but you think it might be useful in the future, put it in an archive folder and just stuff it in that, so that if we have to go back and find it, we can find it. On more than one occasion, I've certainly been in that situation with, where is it? Oh my word. We really could have used that. Most of it, 90% of it is inappropriate. Brian?
Yeah, could you share your screen again to pull up that document?
Yep.
If you wouldn't mind. And while you're doing that, so is somebody going to circulate, I'm guessing you, Bob, like the template of what you want each group
Yes,
to?
absolutely. Yes, I
Okay.
will.
Yep. So I was just thinking in terms of making it as user-friendly as possible. My mindset is very much like with Google Drive right now, so I apologize if this isn't possible with Dropbox, but I think if our entries for each task group is kind of like a summary / index to the key work product that can actually link directly to that document.
Yep.
And if not, then at least maybe what we could do is just have one folder that puts all the documents that we're referring to in that folder so that the consultant doesn't have to look through each task group. But I don't know. Are you able to?
Yes, yeah, I
Yeah,
think
sure.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. We should, yeah, we should try to make it a little bit uniform, kind of what folders are with it are in there. So maybe there's a folder that says work products. Maybe there's a folder that's examples from other towns. Another folder that's links of interest or something. So I'll let Bob share his screen and kind of look at the
Okay.
water and sewer again. That's what you were asking for, right, Brian? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the online stuff.
Oh, okay. All right, so some of those links, are any of those links to Dropbox stuff?
No. And if
Okay.
you go back,
They can be though.
they
Okay, yeah.
certainly can be. And
Got
I was just, as a matter of fact, part of the activity in the last 2 days was, as Valerie said, cleaning up Dropbox and getting a simpler taxonomy that's more logical. Because as we went through it, we just kept adding, rather than, looking back and saying, well, does this particular structure make sense? And
Yeah.
I will continue to do that, but there's no reason that we can't go into Dropbox and do exactly the same with a link.
And I'll say too, so water and sewer by nature is a little bit more factual. So I think that's why this appears a little bit more like that. So I think other task groups may, I know, like, for example, the climate change group has worked on filling out the matrix that Brian had sent out last fall of vision, goal, strategy, task. So if you are in the climate change group, the title of information could be just completion of or ongoing editing of this document. You can describe what's in the document and then link to it. So it might be a little bit different for each group just based on the nature of it. For the public outreach group, it may be the date something was published and then the link to the article itself, or a link to a presentation made. So it's definitely, hopefully adaptable.
I think it's a great opportunity to go back and look at what you have and restructure it. And certainly that's happened. I mean, when I set this whole thing up, everything was consistent. And right now, and I think it's appropriate, it is not consistent, and nor should it be. There are differences within the task groups. But again, simpler and more appropriate and consistent is better. But if you look at, and I'm not sure I can bring it up. If you look, water and sewer. We did resource material. We'll look at it. Can you see that on my screen?
No,
No?
it's still the Word document.
Microsoft
Okay,
Word.
hold on just a minute. I'll bring it up. Stop sharing and reshare. Okay. You see it now?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, and so you can see with this, they're just in the resource material, how it was broken down. And that was logical for us. Aquifer and wells, we did have an archive and there's a lot of junk in there. But fire water was important. We had a lot of telephone conversations, which we documented with a number of people, engineers, well drillers, et cetera. MRPC, municipal wastewater system that covered everything from what we have to projections that have been put together by Wright and Pierce, drafts, what projections for a public sewer system, public water system, what is in place with septic systems, which really is now available online. I should have done that. At this point, we had created it and it was put online. But again, this was fairly detailed and fairly structured because that's the way it works. Different structures are appropriate for other task groups.
So perhaps it's useful to just go through the different task groups and kind of, if it's possible, just to assign this task
Yes, it
to
certainly
one
is.
person
That
to
was-
lead it. Yeah.
It was my next hope that we would do that.
Good.
You see if I have a good summary here. Okay, I will now share this, I hope. Okay, can we see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So Valerie, if you could be the scribe on this.
Sure. Yes.
Okay, so climate change. Wow, not at all at once, please.
Do you have anybody there from climate change, or are they all not here tonight?
Ken and I are
Key and I
here.
are both
Yeah, and
on
maybe
climate
well,
change.
we'll have to talk about it and come up with a plan.
Okay, so who's on first on this one?
Probably Key and I, although we might be able to get Lynn involved, but as she said, I think it's best if the group,
Well, isn't,
if the task group talk and decide who's going to take action. I don't think anybody who's in this meeting now can necessarily speak for a task group that they're part of.
What I imagine, though, is that there could be one individual who could kind of take the lead on a first attempt. And that
I
could be,
agree with you, but
yeah,
we can't decide that.
they need to
And
talk among themselves.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
we have to
even
talk about it.
even if, I mean, I mean, we can't appoint somebody who isn't in the meeting because they may or may not be able to do it. And so we really do need to talk offline about who's in the best position to do some of these things.
So climate change needs to talk and then get back to you.
Right, that's what Ken and I will talk and we'll get back to you.
Hey, when are
Yeah.
you going to get back?
Well, we need to talk to Rebecca and Sharon and Lynn and I
And Sharon,
know, I said Rebecca, Sharon and Lynn.
yeah.
Let's say in a week.
Okay. Valerie, you're going to be out next week, right?
yes.
They can get back to you, Robert.
Yeah, that's fine.
Back to her when she gets back. I mean, I'll go back to, since
Well-
I've been writing these things down, I'll go back and point out that I think Bob said it's more important to be accurate than to worry about the timing of it. And I think that applies exactly in the case of any of these task groups and the stuff that they've got to do. Some may have data right at hand and the way water and sewer does, and some may not. And I think we've got to talk to people.
Yeah, I
Okay, so
agree.
why don't we
And we-
set up a
We have
protocol?
had a hard time even setting up meetings, mainly because of Rebecca and then us. I mean, all of us are doing other task groups or other work. So Rebecca's been out and, you know, she really has the most amount of data. So I would say I will send out and try to set up a meeting this week or next week, and we will just get on it.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
say, to clarify, I don't think that you'll need to share, it depends what you mean by data, right? So I think it's possible if you wanted to start working on what maybe the left side of that column, like what the different items are, and then maybe shoot it to Rebecca and she can fill in a link to the MVP report or to the, some, whatever else it might be. So there could be a little bit more back and forth, if that's helpful.
Sounds like, though, that this is going to take more time than just a week, trying to pull people together. So maybe we should push out the July 7th date to when everybody has everything back, even though, Valerie, I understand you're under the gun with the consultant, but by the time you get a contract back and forth. So maybe if everybody aims to have their stuff back to everybody, who's in charge, and start working on their drop boxes by July 7th, that's more realistic, considering there's a major holiday in there and people are out.
Yeah, I want to make sure that it's what we're asking is clear. I was hoping it wouldn't be like a huge lift. And so I want to make sure that we're all understanding what is being asked of us. Because in addition to this, I'll be sharing, of course, data layers and plans that the town has produced. So that's certainly not on the task groups, but really
But it
it's
seems
more-
like what you're asking each group to go is to go into the Dropbox and clean up their boxes.
Pretty much.
Well,
So is
and-
that pretty simplifying it?
that was
Go in and box it and clean up your boxes. So they need to have they need to talk among themselves and decide who's going to do part of it. But if you say about July 7th, otherwise let us know if you're delayed. I think you've got to give some people some wiggle room here.
Yeah, sure. The Dropbox thing is half of it. I think it's really this document that Bob has up. That's the main one. But all right. So if climate change has to discuss amongst themselves, should we just move on to the next group?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Mary?
I guess that's me. Yeah, I think I need to call a meeting with the task group, but I'm looking at going through my folder for all of the source info and creating this document. Is this what you're looking for? And what in those documents, if the source is a document that we find applicable to what we want to include in the master plan, am I getting this right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure you need to make the decision that it's definitely going to be included in the master plan. It may be background information
Yeah,
that is important to understanding something in a master plan. So
So-
it's not necessarily something, that will be reflected per se in a master plan.
so what you want is a list of our sources.
Yeah, and what
And-
comes from those sources, right?
And I'm sorry,
And what comes from those sources. The
okay,
document, in a very brief line, what is in that document, and perhaps the appropriateness to some element of your subject matter, and then
right,
where it came from.
Right.
And just differentiate, I think, between online and stuff that you've found, developed, whatever, that is not online, that's put in Dropbox.
I'll say that I think the most interesting thing here is really going to be what work has been produced from the task groups. So I think there may be a little bit of, I don't know what the correct word is, but when we, bring in the consulting firm, it's true, they may have their own history of what kinds of documents they pull from for inspiration. So it's definitely important for us to try to communicate the kind of tenor of these different groups, right? But I think for me, at least, the most important thing is, if your task group has created a document that says, something that, some product that you may have created, I think that's going to be most useful. The end of the week, so I'm not very clear right now.
Well, yeah, I agree with that, but I think there's a lot that has not necessarily been put together by the task groups that will depend on documents that the task groups have found either online or somewhere else that they've sequestered in Dropbox or hopefully in Dropbox, possibly elsewhere.
And
Can
and
I-
I will
can I
I
offer-
will admit that Dropbox and me are not user friendly. So I haven't been good about Dropbox. So I guess I'm going to have to,
Well, Mary, I
look
can
at it
help with
and-
that. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
Mary, you can always go my way. I send it to Romer and he puts it in Dropbox.
thanks, man. Okay, so again, let's get back to what the action is going to be and the basis for the action. I would like to see it done in one way or another, certainly not with, I think, the level of detail that water and sewer has done it. I think to a very large degree, other task groups are going to be considerably briefer on that. And in some cases, aren't going to have produced a document that at least water and sewer saw as being more than would ever be put into the master plan, but could be edited back and used as elements of the master plan.
Am I correct, Bob, that the whole point of this exercise is to make sure the Dropbox is a place where the consultant can go and under each category, find out the information that we have presently developed to this point and go from there?
Yep.
All right, that simplifies it. So let's move on to economic development.
Why do we need to talk about each task group? Why not just put out something to all the task groups and say, this is what we want you to do by July 7th, and here's a template for it? I don't see any purpose to going through each one of these.
We all seem to
Maybe
know
I'm
what to
missing
do.
something, but I don't see it.
Well, we have had people that have left the committee that have been part of it, and some of this has changed.
All right.
Well, as a minimum,
I don't disagree with that, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem to me that with the 8 of us going through each one of these bullets is the best use of our time. Maybe
No,
I'm
and-
wrong, though.
Ken, the only thing I want to do is, I hate to develop my incredibly OCD project management mentality, but I'd like to know who's going to do what and what may not be generating this document or documents, but it's coordinating the committee to do so and identifying perhaps ultimately who is going to do that or how many people are going to get together to do it. So that's all I'm interested in.
Okay,
Who's
we've
gonna-
done climate change, Robert. We've done cultural and historical. What about economic development?
I'll do that one.
Okay, now we have housing.
Yep. Sasha can do
That's-
that. And we'll
That's
catch up
Sasha,
with her.
and we know
Right.
Sasha will do that.
Yes.
Land use and GIS mapping.
I'll do that one too.
Okay, municipal facilities and services and facilities. The municipal buildings conditions assessment report is done, and I'm assuming that's in the Dropbox.
Yes.
And Valerie is now in charge of municipal services. Correct, Valerie?
What, in what regard?
Well, I used to have municipal services and facilities. The facilities part is done. That's in the municipal building conditions report. Correct? You agree? And you
Uh,
said you were going to take over the municipal services, the departments. Or am I incorrect? I could be incorrect.
So, okay, so I think okay. I think you're referring to my perspective on how outreach should be conducted relative to how we should review municipal services within town. Is that what you mean?
Well, you said you were gonna handle it. Or
Yeah, I
that's
think
what I
that-
understood. If you're not, just say so.
I think I had a differing opinion on how public outreach should be handled. Not that I would be doing.
All right, well, then you and I should talk about that. So let's move on to open space then, and
So-
I'll get hold of Valerie and we'll talk about that.
And
Right?
municipal services and facilities, this isn't something that we could approach Don Lowe and Randy about. Not that they have.
Now,
to be-
Randy's already taken care of facilities.
He's already done it.
Okay, well, there you
That's
go.
already, that's a facilities
I'm
is
not. I
done.
don't think I understand what you all mean by done. So you're saying that there has been.
Done is, there's a report that literally takes apart every single building in this
So you
town
mean-
and
so
tells
you
you
mean
what
done-
needs to be done, when it
Okay.
needs to be done, where it needs to be done, how long it'll cost over the next 15 years.
So what you mean is, I'm sorry, maybe I'm being a little pedantic, but you mean that what is done is this task in terms of conveying to the consultant what has been accomplished.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
nothing more needs to be done on facilities because this is the complete report.
All taken care of.
I think
The
that would
only-
be
and-
it.
and
That
I
sounds like
guess-
it'd be it for this task group. I think I had sent out some draft survey questions a couple months back. Those could be added in as well as a draft.
Okay, so it's two things, and what we're addressing here is not projections, but current. And so the facilities part of it was done by the consultant. to
Oh, by
Randy.
Brandy.
I'm sorry, I read a report that wasn't Randy's. He and I commented on it.
Oh, no, yeah, he had a consultant do it. Yeah, I see what
Right.
you're saying.
Exactly. So that portion of it is done. So we now know what we've got and its
Yeah.
condition and what the projection is for the $5 million over the next 10 years that needs to maintain it. But what we don't know is what we need to do in terms of appropriating that for various other things, or what we need to add to it or whatever. And that is obviously closely connected with municipal services.
Exactly.
And so what I
Exactly.
hear is that Valerie put together this list of questions and will reach out to within the town employees and departments and get their perspective on what they project as additional needs for municipal services. And oh, by the way, the facilities necessary to support those. Does that sound right, Valerie? Okay,
I think that maybe this conversation should happen elsewhere. I still am differing from the test. So I do not have, I don't think I'll have the capability of conducting the surveys. I think this is something that the consulting firm should take over.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I'm not sure it should be the consulting firm, but maybe we should talk about this offline. I agree with Val.
okay, it's over. Okay,
Open
population
I'll do that.
demographics.
I'll do that.
Thank you. Okay,
Did we
public
skip
outreach and communication.
open space?
Of
I'm
course.
sorry,
Oh,
Who
you
else?
said, Ed said. he
Ed's
did?
doing
Okay.
that, right. Population demographics and projections, Brian,
Hmm.
I think Brian already said he'd do it.
Yep.
Public
Okay.
outreach.
It's a hard one to nail down.
I'll do that.
I'll do it with you, Robert.
Schools, and nothing's happened on that.
No,
Mhm.
nothing's happened on schools.
Survey, we have a very summary information. And I
So
think, go ahead,
sorry,
Brian.
I'm just gonna, so schools, survey and town finances, I can volunteer to put stuff together, because although nothing specific has happened with schools from the master plan steering committee, I do think I'm aware of specific resources that we may want the consulting firm to be aware of that exist, so I can pull that together.
Okay, good. Yep. And that is the primary purpose of this conversation. You're right.
For the
Uh,
survey, will we have the business survey, the economic development survey?
Yeah, that's part of the economic development section.
Will we have that by then?
We won't have the results of it, no, but I can, reference it.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
it
but we
will-
have multiple others,
Oh, right.
right?
We
No, we
do,
don't have
but
them.
we do, but I would really wonder if they might want to do a survey. I mean, I think our survey had some flaws in it, and it was also pre-COVID, and there's been a whole lot of change. A lot of things have happened in the intervening 2 years, and I just wonder if we could have a discussion with the consultant about
Sure.
what kinds of things they want from a survey, because I don't think we should say that we're done or, that we're done with surveys, because in some ways, I think there's a lot of survey stuff I would like to see.
No, right, no.
Okay,
we're
but that's
definitely
not what we're
done with-
saying.
Yeah, I think what we're saying is, and I was confused about this point too, is that we are set on what we need for bringing the consultant up to speed rather than done with surveys, right?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, it's all right, but you're right that we won't have the economic development work done in time. I'll let them know once that's available.
But again, going back, we have at least 3 other surveys.
Yeah.
That address
That they can
economic
look at, yeah.
development. And whether or not they're appropriate or well analyzed is almost academic. Let's have the consultant take a look at them and see what they think, and we can have a conversation. Okay, transportation improvements. Ken,
Okay, so Ken, I know you've got a lot on your plate, but can you work with me on this?
Didn't
Yeah,
you
sure.
guys do a PowerPoint on it and that pretty much had a pretty
Oh,
good summary?
Yes, but I've got to go through all of my folder and pull out all my sources and get it together. I mean,
Yeah.
Ken, did you hear me?
I don't know if he heard you, Mary.
I'm happy to help you.
There you
Thank
go.
you. Thank you.
No, I said that at the beginning, sorry.
Oh, okay.
okay, and ultimately water and sewer, and I need to do some work on that, but that's generally in pretty good shape.
Where were we
So
at,
let's go,
Bob?
yeah,
Land use was, anyone?
Oh, yes.
Valerie,
I'll take care of it.
Valerie.
Okay, all right.
I have a question on some of these sources. Is there a timeline on when they were published? I mean, if you
Oh, I don't
have
know.
a source from 2000, I mean,
But I think the answer is no, but make it clear what its date is,
okay,
so that we know whether we're dealing with antiquity and whether there's been an update, but at least identify that. And
okay.
in some cases, there may not be much in the way of new data. Hopefully there is.
Can I just make a standing offer to everybody here? So when I'm listening to this conversation, it actually reminds me a lot of when I quit working at a law firm and I was on like 10 different cases that had to be transitioned to new people. And so like you basically have to come up with a transition memo where they're not asking you to like finish all the work on all those cases before you go, but just lay out in an organized way what's already been done and where you think they should look to keep the ball moving. I feel like people are thinking that this is a bigger lift than it really is. So I'm happy to talk with anybody about how you can organize this and also not spend like 40 hours doing it, because I don't think that's necessary.
That's
Oh,
a
I
good
think we need-
analogy, Brian.
I thought I'd made it very clear, though, that we're documenting where we are. We're not documenting where we're going, and we're providing the basis and information that got us where we are. The pertinent stuff. If there's a lot of junk out there that you don't feel is appropriate, what you discovered, put it in an archive. And if that topic comes up later in conversation with a consultant, we can have a conversation about that. But I will be happy to put together a framing memo that provides this and the narrative that needs to precede it, and the two documents in which people are expected to put pertinent information in a reasonable organization. But I do think they need to look at, certainly in Dropbox, where that stuff is. Cleaning up is probably an important part of this task.
Okay.
Okay, so going back, we've identified the people who are going to coordinate it. We're going to come back with at least that answer about where we're going by July 7th. And then a reasonably good estimate with a certain amount of urgency to get that going. And at the same time, Valerie, I'd really like to see from your perspective and the consultant's perspective what their priorities are for this type of information.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
I'll be out of town for the next 4 days in a conference, but I'll try to get this out tomorrow morning.
Perfect. That'd be
Sounds good.
great. Are there any other questions about what we're asking here?
Again, to Brian's point, don't make it more than it is. It's
We'll roll
what have we done and what have we used to get there?
in our spare time.
I understand.
Oh, my.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
I will stop sharing my opinion or my documents.
Indeed.
You want a motion to adjourn, Robert?
Yeah, I'd really enjoy that.
Okay.
Okay, I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
Thanks, Mark. If I hear a single nay, I'm going to get very excited.
Agreed.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy
Thank
4th of
you.
July.
Yeah.